Hey, welcome back to JJ's Do All. Some of you may be wondering what I've been up to in the last 2 months. I've been on a project which originally I was not going to make a video of because my buddy who gave me the scrap metal pieces to start with told me that if the guy who gave him the parts got wind of the fact they weren't for my buddy, he would surely want to charge me something for it. So it was with that information that I decided not to make a video about what I was up to. Fast forward 3/4 of the way through the project, I'm talking with my buddy and mentioned that no, I wasn't making a video because of what he and I discussed. He laughed and said, well, he doesn't watch YouTube, so I could have made a video. So now I've decided to tell the tale in this video and mostly narrate after the fact, but I think it would be most interesting to first show you what the finished product is, then go back in time and show you the pile of rust I started with. So here's a little bit of video of my local Memorial Day parade.
Right Wait, oh, there you go. Go here. Oh. My arm is amazing. Thank you! She gets excited by that. That was horrible. Sorry, got my face right. No, that's alright. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. That was you, Olivia? Oh my god.
We all had a ton of fun throwing candy at kids and spreading the good word. We invited people to our local church on a business card, and another flyer in the candy bags was promoting Hope Day, which is a day of hope for people who are in need, and that's sponsored by multiple area churches. Flashback now to the day my buddy pulled the pile of parts into my driveway. These pile of parts served as a feed wagon, and let's just say it was complete with a salt lick for the cows. And that easily explains the state of rust and the explanation why the entire rear I-beam needed to be replaced. The story is the feed wagon was given to my buddy 2 or 3 years before he went to go get it. So my buddy had already seen this feed wagon. His plans were to take it home, strip off the wood and get rid of that, save the wheels, and scrap the rest of the junk. I happened to mention to my buddy that in order to get any running gear to build a hay wagon out of, I'd probably have to drive a good 6 to 7 hours west, and then another 6 to 7 hours east to get back home. I showed him a running gear I had my eye on Marketplace, which was located in Maryland, and I'm from Rhode Island. So my buddy says, listen, don't go to Maryland to get that running gear. It actually had a metal deck on it too, so it would have been a good start for what I wanted. But he said, don't go and get it, because he knew he may be able to get his hands on a running gear that would need some rebuilding. Now, the price was right. So much so that my buddy told me, hey, if you look at it, if you look at what's there and I'm not interested, he's not going to be offended. So the stage was set. He was going to get the feed wagon from his friend and bring it to me, and whatever I decided, I decided. He could still scrap it if I wasn't interested, but he was willing to give it a shot so that I could take a look at it. So the day came when he actually got the feed wagon from his friend. And the story goes, when his friend went to get the running gear onto the flatbed of my buddy's truck. Now keep in mind, this is running gear with a reach pole in between and, wood that's fallen apart that was part of the feeder. Well, my buddy's got a flatbed truck, flatbed pickup truck. So when they set this heap down on the back, the rear wheels were hanging off of the flatbed. The frame broke in two. The rear axle fell to the ground. The wood crumbled off the frame entirely. And the rear part of the running gear was rolling down the driveway. And the way he tells it, I'll tell you, I wish I was there to see it. So they stopped the piece from rolling down and gathered everything up. And so the good part of the story here is there was no wood to deal with. So that got left at the farm. So he brought me a pile of metal strapped to the back of his truck. I looked it over and I thought to myself, if I replace the reach pole, I'll be all set. So I said, yep, let's take it and unload it. And so I fired up the forklift and commenced to unloading it. And boy, once I got it down on the ground and had a look at how, especially the rear I-beam was so bad, it was going to need to be replaced. But I thought to myself, well, I've already got it down on the ground and the price is right? My buddy and I barter. So, I didn't pay him any cash for it. And because I know how to weld, it's just a little bit more labor. So I made the decision I was going to rebuild the running gear and make a hay wagon out of it. The first thing I needed to do was assess what I had. I really needed to figure out the size of the wagon I wanted to make and needed to begin figuring out what metal I would need to start the project. So after performing some precision calculations, the kind needed to make a hay wagon, I jotted down a few options for metal that I was going to need, made a plan how to fix the wheels that were so rusty in the bead that no tire was going to hold air, and begin discussing paint schemes with the wife. It was time to start the project after the rainy weather lost its grip on our springtime. So I began by heating up the round stock that surrounded each reach pole at both the front and the rear axles. One propane torch, that didn't really do it. A propane torch and a MAP gas torch, moving the thing all around, that didn't do it. And called my buddy up and said, hey, can I borrow your oxyacetylene torches? So threw the things on the trailer, brought them over to his house, and boy, we hit the things with a rosebud torch, and nothing seemed to be enough to break the rust. So we called it quits, didn't want to waste gas, and called it quits. And I brought it back home, and I decided, well, I'm gonna plasma cut the round stock and right into the reach pole too if I had to. And who cares at this point? But what I really wanted to do was be able to open it up and break that rust and get the reach pole out of there. Do you think I could get what was left of the reach pole out of either rear or front axle members? No chance. I'm telling you, it was time for drastic measures. I made sure my wife wasn't home when I fired up my shenanigans, and I cut a square hole with the plasma cutter in what was left of each reach pole, where it was most solid, or as solid as I could get it. Passed a chain through the reach pole and attached the chain around the pin to my receiver. And I chained the other end to a big old red oak tree and then commenced to darn near setting my airbags off. I really wasn't sure if my airbags would deploy before or after my truck's frame bent. I started off in four-wheel drive, and I took the slack out of the chain and, just started pulling and dug some good ruts in my gravel driveway and decided I was going to have to back up and put a little bit of slack in the chain and ease forward and give it a couple bumps. And, this method slowly increased in force. And remember, I'm about to get punched in the face by my airbag or make my truck dog walk for the rest of its life. So, I'm really kind of easing into this whole thing. So I was kind of sneaking up on the violence required to part these two frozen pieces. And, I finally got it. I realized after putting the truck in park, after a couple of good solid bangs, that I'd made about a ½ inch of progress. So that meant it was moving. And now it was just a matter of time of rinse and repeat until I conquered steel packed with iron oxide. The first step after my success was to cut the new reach pole, stick it in the steer axle, and weld up the round stock around the reach pole. Since the front axle is not the pivot axle, I was happy to weld it not only to itself, but to the reach pole as well. And I kind of chuckled, thinking, well, the next guy that's going to try and pull this reach pole out of the front axle, he's going to tweak his frame or set his airbags off if he's got a newer truck. So the rear axle, I welded up the round tube without the reach pole inside of there, and got it all welded up and did so at just the right heat setting. I didn't want anything dripping down inside to where the reach wouldn't fit in there, but I welded that up and then slathered the reach pole as well as the inner surface of the round stock with grease and inserted the two together, and that was it. I had mated all four axles, or all four axle stubs together. And so I was on my way. At that point, it was time to think about paint, and I decided on regular old Rust-Oleum Farm John Deere green, enamel paint. But I went to Amazon and picked up some enamel hardener. I wanted to achieve more like an automotive type rough, sturdy finish. I decided I was going to brush the color on, and aside from the fact that the brush hardened its bristles even after cleaning with solvent, causing me to buy, less expensive brushes for the yellow and for the remaining metal that needed to be colored green, I'm happy with the finish. It's tough, and it appears to be durable so far with the hardener in it. So the wheels needed a lot of attention. Two of the wheels were so severely pitted that, the tires bead where it sits against the inside of the wheel. There was no way it was holding air. So I wire brushed them and, took the tire off the wheels, wire brushed the wheels up at the beads, and, welded them up, and then followed by some grinding and sanding and 2 coats of primer before the color. And, it ended up being good enough to hold air and long enough for the parade, which I was happy about. So goodish enough repair for now. The tires, they're severely weather checked. And, I was hopeful that they were going to hold together long enough to finish the parade, and they did. But new rubber's on the list, and on the list of wants for the hay wagon. So next came figuring out how I wanted to design the wooden structure, and I had to go around the internet and borrow various designs, and some taken from video, some taken from pictures. And I finally decided on the plan that I was going to use, and surprisingly had very little modification along the way in design. That's a little bit unusual for me with any of my projects that involve wood, or I should say wood and steel. If it's just wood, then I've got a better idea what I'm doing. But if I start with steel and then I've got to adapt, put some wood to it, I always seem to not have a clear path in my head how some things are going to go together. So I end up modifying quite a bit along the way, but that didn't happen this time. So once I had a solid foundation and a beginning structure, I knew I wanted to build benches. A different buddy of mine has a small farm. One of the things he does is hay wagon rides. I see all the effort he puts into getting hay out of the barn and onto the wagon and off the wagon and back into the barn if it's going to rain. And, he almost seems to do this each day. But his hay is dry, and it's the same hay he uses for feed. So, he's got to do what he's got to do. So aside from the fact that I don't want to buy bales just for the wagon, and I'd have to store them covered, and I really don't have enough roof for all my goodies now. So using actual hay bales was really kind of a no-go for my design. So the thing I wanted to do was to look for comfortable bench designs, and I found a few that look good. Many of them had similar measurements. One that I particularly liked had a back with 3 different angles on it, and I was intrigued, but I wanted to be sure that it was comfortable as well. So I mocked up a small bench section out of 2x4s and sat down and gave it a go. And I decided I liked the feel, and that was the design that I used for my benches. So it was time to shop for more lumber. Now, it could be noted here that there is a local sawmill that does really good rough cut lumber, and they do custom orders. And I have used them before, and I would have used them this time if it wasn't for the fact that I really do lack enough roof to keep the wood dry when it's not in use. And the last thing I wanted was for the local rough sawn lumber to begin rotting away after a few years. So I decided it was pressure treated or nothing. I just wanted it to last for the long haul. After building the frame, deck, and benches, it was time to think about stairs. Now, this is an interesting story, but that other buddy of mine that does hay wagon rides, he's got his hay wagon, and I ended up cutting off the stairs from his hay wagon and building him a set of stairs that would actually meet code if they were on a new residential building today. And I did this to help the older folks that I watched struggle to get on and off the hay wagon. The steps that he had were about 11 and a half inches tall to get up. And so that was from the ground to the first step, from the first step to the second step, and then from the second step to the deck of his hay wagon. So there was several steps at 11 and a half inches, which that's just way too tall when you've got older people that their joints don't work the same. And so I built him a nice set of stairs for his hay wagon and cut the ones off that he had, and wouldn't you know it, they came in clutch, I'll tell you, because as I started running out of time, it was real easy to make the decision that those were the steps I was going to use just to be able to have people get up and onto the hay wagon for the Memorial Day parade. So that is on the list of things that I want to modify and make right, like I did with his hay wagon. But, we did good for now. So I guess in short, I would have liked to have gotten video more than what my wife and friends shot, and I've included here. Would have liked to have gotten video of the whole project. But out of respect, I decided this wasn't going to be a video until my buddy asked why it wasn't on my channel. And that gave me the okay. So here we are, and I hope you appreciate all the work that's gone into it. And I do apologize that it wasn't a series of videos on the channel, but hopefully you'll understand that there was a reason why. And once I got the okay, now we're going to put it up there. Thanks for listening to this, and I hope you enjoyed the story and some of these pictures and some of the video. And now you are up to date on what I've been working on the last couple months. On to more things.